reforms. So the first thing is kind of where our system has been, or is now, which is failing our Black students, our at-risk students, our English language learners, and students of disability. These are the numbers in math. These are the numbers in English language arts. And you can see the same trends with the students who are being left behind. And then teacher turnover, which is an issue we've been focused a lot on, which is just astronomical in DC, much higher than the national average for urban districts. Within a year, we're losing 25 to 30% of our teachers every year, and 50% within 3 years, 70% within 5 years. And we're losing a ton of them are really experienced teachers, and we're also losing a ton of teachers of color over time, which is really, really important in our educator representation. Principal turnover is also astronomical, anywhere from 20 to 25% annually of schools are starting with a new principal every single year. And DC, over a 10-year period until a few years ago, had the largest drop in Black teachers of any city in the country, including New Orleans, which went through a massive overhaul after Katrina of its school system. So a huge drop in the share of Black teachers and this huge Latinx representation gap, where we have a growing number of Hispanic students, 21%, and only 7% of our teachers. And the gap is like 40 to 50% in Ward 1 and 4, and something we've tried to address. So educator and student representation. So our governance structure right now, we're the only district in the country where the state superintendent of education is chosen by the mayor, obviously, because we are not a state. But in other places, it's not like the governor chooses that person. In 12 states, they are elected, and in 38, they're appointed by a board of education, which is generally elected, right, by the public. So a much more democratic approach to that. And if we're asking for statehood, maybe one of the things we could do is in our own education system, treat ourselves like a state and have that kind of democratic governance system. DC is one of the only major cities where charter schools, for example, are independent of both the authority of the school board. So for example, in New York, they have a lot of public charter schools, but they are still under the same district management, right, of their traditional public schools, and mayoral authority, where our mayor here kind of says, hands off, we give them total autonomy. We have an elected DC State Board of Education, as y'all know, and vote for that. And they have way, way less power than they have in other states and jurisdictions. They have basically the power to approve some things that OSSI sends them, the superintendent's office, but they have not much power for the people we vote to be in that position to make education decisions. But what is this really about? A lot of people say that we have mayoral control so we can do better, right, with our students who are left furthest behind. But if you look at a lot of research on this, look what it's really about, right, which is usually race and power. In majority white districts, school boards and the power of local school boards are almost never abolished, right? But in majority Latino districts, that's much higher, and in majority Black districts, it's much, much higher. And over the course of history, there's a lot of good research that shows when there's an increase in Black power on city councils across the country and in education systems, that's usually when someone comes in and puts a mayor or the governor to come in and take over the school system. So there's a direct relationship between kind of the community power, especially in communities of color, and whether the mayor takes over, the governor takes over a school system. So where is the community voice in our system? There's been a huge increase in the amount of people showing up to the State Board of Education and testifying. People want a voice in their system. That's the only place they can go to kind of give testimony on a monthly basis. But the State Board doesn't have the authority right now to really affect change and policy. This is, don't expect you to read this right now, but I'll share it with everybody. A whole lot of different proposals about how we might reform our system. It's not mayoral control or no mayoral control. This is bilingual here. But maybe the State Board has more authority in certain areas, the power to produce legislation that would required to get a hearing and a vote in the council, to initiate policy instead of just approve it, more oversight of all of our schools, including charter schools. So there's a lot of areas where we could have more community voice and power in our system. We've started in our own teacher work, come up with guiding principles for what we're calling our schools, our voice campaign, which will share with you and is in that website that has been at the bottom of the page, which is basically just that our system right now is failing to serve those most in need, and we need to reform it. And so some ways to take action, which is one, Councilmember Robert White proposed a special committee on education governance. Unfortunately, Chairman Mendelson pushed back hard and would not put it on the agenda. But Councilmember Che, Councilmember White, Councilmember Lewis George have all proposed bills to make OSSI independent and make other changes. We need to keep up pressure there. We need to educate the public about our system and how it's connected to a lack of progress. That this is not separate from why our students are not doing as well as they ought to be. Chairman Mendelson's really said repeatedly that this is a distraction from focusing on instruction, from focusing on learning loss. But this is very much why we don't make progress, because the good ideas from the community don't have a fighting chance to become policy. We're having our own summit on March 21st, which I'll drop the link in to register for, where we're having sessions on mayoral control and school governance, as well as a whole lot of other issues like teacher diversity. And then we're going to have many events through the spring and summer as part of this. There's the opportunity to get involved by recording a video on your thoughts on it, writing an op-ed, any way we can kind of keep the public pressure up on this issue. So I'll stop there. I know I went through that all very